Oh, you all went away. So we'll give it a couple more minutes. People can kind of keep joining in and we can enjoy the sunshine together. I can't see anything because the glare is a little nuts, but ultimately it's just a big screen that I'm looking at anyway, so. Okay. Once I get going, I'll try to avoid the awkward silences. But for now, look, I created pages, notes. I did my homework. I knew my mother and father would be watching, so I did my homework. Just like in college, I always did my homework in college. Everyone should know that. Okay. Couple more minutes. I'm gonna sit here like a news anchor. But I've got 2 minutes till, so we'll do something in a couple minutes. And we've got 19. You know what, I'm gonna make these bigger so you can see the color. And that's how a glass of rosé should be poured anyways. Or you can do like what I like to call a Minnesota pour, and that's about to right there. And do the rosé of Syrah as well. Hopefully people can see those. I think maybe they're a little far forward. I think you can see that now. Pardon me, the allergies are starting to kick in out here, which in the grand scheme of things is not when you want to have allergies, the sniffles and cough, because people think you have coronavirus. So now if I can just remember my homework as I did it. We've got a few people in here. We've got about 6 people. So I really can't see anything. So I want to make sure that you can see the color of these as much as possible. Because rosé is beautiful. Which you will quickly find out that I love rosé. Okay. More people joining. We'll give it a couple more seconds here. Okay, for those of you who haven't done it, you want to mute your microphones. So on somewhere. Yeah, I can hear myself. Go. Okay. So yeah, just for those of you who haven't done this, I'll try not to fidget too much. Keep your cameras and microphones off. Otherwise, people will be able to hear you. And then it's a little disconcerting, I guess, for everyone else. But you know what I'm going to do too, because I'm a professional here. I'm going to turn my phone on silent. We're very relaxed here at Bouchain, so forgive the nature if it's not your speed, but it's Carneros, so we're very casual down here. And I've got noon, so I'm going to get started. We've got about 8 people in there. I wish you could all say hello to each other and to me, but such is the nature of this right now. And so, okay. Oh, I see somebody. We'll want to turn our cameras and microphones off. And so, okay, I'm going to get started. So, Another thing to mention with these tastings is if for some reason it goes dark and we cut out, you can use the same link to log back on. If I see that everybody's gone, I'll just stop at that point. But bear with us, we're learning as we go with these things. We're used to running wineries and not production companies, and so we're doing our best, and we'll have a few glitches here and there, but hopefully this is just going to be fun. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk about how we go about making rosé. We can talk about tasting notes and such. I'll get into it a little bit about what we're looking for in our rosés, but more so this is a discussion on how we make them. And the point that I'm going to try to make is that rosé is many things, and it is, above all else, it is delicious, and that's the reason why we should enjoy it. But when we compare it to things like Cabernets or Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays, there's still a lot of work and time and effort that go into a rosé. We see it on the shelf and we think it's just a sort of light, bright, fresh, fruity wine that, maybe it didn't take so much to get there, but it's actually traveled a long way to get to our table in front of you. And forgive me, I have to look at my notes so that I stay on track. Otherwise, I will ramble. My brain right now is like 10 train tracks all next to each other, and hopefully we're going to get down to the same message at some point. And so a little bit about who I am. I am Erik Goodmanson. I'm the Associate Winemaker here. I started in 2015 with Bouchain Vineyards. I've been in Napa Valley since 2007, out on the West Coast as a transplant from Minnesota. Hello, Mom and Dad. Since 2002. I kicked around the West Coast for 5 years and then eventually found my way into the wine industry. Was at a couple of wineries, eventually went back to UC Davis, and then found myself at Bouchain in 2015. Both Chris and I, Chris Kajani is our head winemaker. I'm the associate, and she's also our general manager. But we both started in 2015 and came to Bouchain and started learning this beautiful property that we see behind us on this actually glorious day. And as I go along, I'll just kind of make a couple notes. There's a couple people that do have their cameras and microphones on. If you want to mute those, I'll make announcements throughout just to kind of keep us, because so maybe we can get people to turn your microphone off especially, because otherwise we'll hear you and everyone will hear you. And so if you make some funny noises, we'll all know. So back to me, my favorite subject, not really. Bouchain 2015, Chris and I took over the winemaking, and we got to Bouchain and we had a rosé of Syrah, but we did not have a rosé of Pinot Noir. And we're a Pinot house, we're a Chardonnay house as well, but we're a Pinot house, and we wanted to make a rosé of Pinot Noir. We both came from wineries in the past that did a Vin Gris, a rosé of Pinot Noir. And so we wanted to, copy is a bad word, but we wanted to those wines. So we decided that we wanted to do a rosé of Pinot Noir starting in 2015. So this was our 5th year together at Bouchain, our 5th harvest. And so let's stop talking about me. I'll try to stop that at least. And so back to kind of why we're here. Rosé is the subject, but what we want to do here at Bouchain right now in this odd time that we're in is provide a little levity. And it's also a good way for us to say thank you to everyone out there for being a part of the Bouchain community. And so it's a fun way for us to just stay busy, really, and just have a little fun with it. And so it also gives me the opportunity for shameless plugs. I might have to count them on my hand. We are still up and running, and we have plenty of rosé for sale. We've got our rosé of Pinot Noir, which goes by the name of Vin Gris of Pinot Noir, fancy word for rosé. We also have our rosé of Syrah. We'll talk about the difference a little bit in those wines, but they are for sale. So shameless plug number 1. And again, I mentioned this is going to be a talk on how we make these wines, not so much the small nuance, but really how we go about making these wines, because something we like to mention to people is that they are not a one-off. They're not something that we put little effort into. Instead, they're actually something that we grow Pinot Noir very specifically for this Pinot Noir rosé, especially. It's not something that's a leftover in a tank and we put it in a bottle. So we do put a lot of thought and time and effort into these wines. And so it's a fun way for us to discuss how that gets made. That's my line of duty here. It's what I do. I help make these wines. I don't help sell them, as you will quickly see. But so moving on, talking about how and why of rosé. Why rosé? Why drink rosé? Because it is one of, in my opinion, and this is all my opinion, obviously, one of the more versatile wines out there. This is a great wine that goes from the beach to the porch to the dinner table to Thanksgiving. It is so diverse. It is consistently one of our favorite Thanksgiving wines because you've got this big plate of food heaping, and instead of the large heaping Cabernet or even some of the bigger Pinots out there, a nice fresh wine sort of fills the gaps and settles in nicely. It doesn't fill you up, and it goes perfectly with turkey. It goes great with everything, really. When I talk about the diversity of the wine for foods, anything from your salad starters to your mains to desserts and everything in between and before and after. Like I said, now rosé has seen such a boost in sales and just being out there on the market. You see it in cans, you see it in bottles, you see it on tap at places. It has gained a lot of popularity. Are they all? No. But rosé is out there. It's here to stay. Let's hope. We've been on that bandwagon for a long time, and we hope that other people join that because it is, as I said, and will continue to say, a really versatile wine. It does have an interesting history, especially in America. People, if I were to say, what's the first term that comes to your head when you think rosé? A lot of people might say white zin. That's fine. It helped people realize the beauty of it early on, and there's still some nice white zins out there. But it still has some of these anchors of the past holding it back in the marketplace. And what we're trying to do is show that we put a lot of effort into it, have fun with it. It's keyword again, versatile. We do spend a lot of time on this, and really the thing is that it's just delicious. Rosé it's so. And why do we make it here? Like I said, Chris and I both came from places that made rosés, and we wanted to get back to that style. And look, we've gotten through page 1, everyone. We're doing great. When I talk about rosés, these are obviously, and we can see these hopefully, rosé of Syrah, which we produce only about 200 cases each year, whereas rosé of Pinot Noir, I said that right, Syrah, Pinot Noir, very different color. We call this Vin Gris, we call this rosé. I'll use those terms, mostly rosé, but it's interchangeable. The style is still the same, but we do have the two different ones here. Okay. Talking about what rosé is now, for our purposes, I'm going to get into basically two types of components that are going to make up our rosés, especially the Vin Gris. And one of those is going to be the whole cluster press fraction. The other is going to be what's called saignée. It's a French term meaning to bleed, I believe. I don't speak French, but I believe that is what they say. Bad jokes are encouraged here. So, what is a rosé again? A rosé is really the juice coming into contact with the skins for only a short amount of time. For color purposes, because the skin is where color of a red wine comes from. It's also where the phenolics and flavor are predominantly. And so a rosé wine, we're only going to have a short amount of time in the grand scheme of things in contact with the skins. And so a rosé is, by its nature, just a wine that's had a very little amount of time on the skins. We don't want to over extract tannin. We don't want to over extract color. And so that's why it's made in this style. And then it maintains its fresher, fruitier aromas and flavors. I've got a segue time on my notes here. And what I want to say is that all of this information that I'm putting you guys through, it'll be a long diatribe on rosé. These are my opinions. And so wine is fluid, literally. I enjoy puns, so bear with me. Wine is fluid, and so that theoretically is really what I'm talking about, is that two people can make wine the same way. I could give two people 10 tons each, tell them, here's the yeast you should use, here's the yeast you should use, and when it's finished, it's going to be two different wines. And so that's one of the beauties of wine in general, is that it's so diverse and it's so fun and it's just different. And so when I'm talking about how we do things, there might be somebody out there saying, well, that's not really how I do it, or that's not what I heard. Maybe that's true. That's another beauty of wine, is that it's just, you can do it how you want to do it. It's, you have the freedom to do so, and that's great. And so I mentioned we have whole cluster press, and then we have saignée. Those are the two components that go into our rosés. There is a third way. There are a few other ways to make rosé, but you can take a white wine and you can pour a little bit of red wine into it. Is that a rosé? Sure. That is not what we necessarily do here. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just not what we do. And so let's get into whole cluster press. As the name suggests, whole cluster means you take a whole cluster still on skins, on the rachis, on the stem, and we chuck it into a press. Another segue moment here is to describe the two different types of presses that we employ here at Bouchain. We have a bladder press. In a bladder press, imagine a stainless steel tube that holds here at least 5 to 6 tons of entire clusters of grapes. That's a lot. It's big. And so inside, inside that tube is essentially a big balloon. And when we shove the grapes in there, we inflate that balloon, and then the clusters get pushed up against the side. And there's channels on the outside of that stainless steel tube, and so the juice flows out of that. We also have what's called a basket press here at Bouchain. We use that mostly for our red wines, really. And that is a press that has a vertical press on it. And so you put another 5 tons of skins after fermentation on our red wines into a basket, and then there's a plate that gets pushed down on top of it, and the wine flows out the sides. For the purposes of today, we're talking about a bladder press. And so this whole cluster press, all those tons get tossed in, berries still on the rachis, and they get squeezed. We use what's called a champagne press cycle. We're getting through page 2. Champagne press cycle, why do we do that? Because it is gentle. First and foremost, we want to have a gentle nature about this winemaking. Nothing is going to be over too much. We don't want to over extract. We want to over color, anything like that. It's meant to be gentle. And so champagne cycle is a 3-hour press cycle. And what that does is it inflates the balloon inside that bag, or inside the tube, slowly over those 3 periods of time, gently increasing the pressure as it goes along. So the juice that comes out first barely has any color on it. The skins break open, all that juice flows out. It's had 0 minutes or just seconds where got contact with the skins. We do have somebody's microphone on just in case somebody wants to mute theirs. That squeeze out over time, be a little bit more contact with the skin. But all this whole cluster press has at maximum 3 hours of skin to juice contact. And so it's very, very, very light. When you pour just whole cluster press fraction from a tank into a glass after it's done fermenting, it's almost clear. It's really beautiful. There's a slight salmon color to it. Let's see. Again, another segue time. A comparison of skin contact when we're talking about something like this, one of our Pinot Noirs from 2019, this has had closer to 3 weeks of skin contact time, and we're taking the juice every day, twice a day, and we're pumping that juice up over the top, trying to extract the juice or the color and the flavor from those skins. Whereas this, very little time. Another person, if we could just turn off our cameras and our microphones, everybody, we'd appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll hear you. We're very relaxed on these things, Corey. There's nothing too fancy. And so this has 3 weeks of time. This has 3 hours of time. And so you can tell, really light in color. That's a nice sort of visual comparison, because the grapes for both of these wines are the same. Pinot Noir has a very dark skin color, and so it provides a lot of great color. So what happens to that juice after we squeeze it out? It's had 3 hours skin contact time. It gets pumped into a stainless steel tank. Why stainless steel? Because it's easy to clean. We use stainless steel for all of our tanks here, really. There are wood, there are concrete tanks. We use stainless steel right now. So stainless steel is easy to clean, which keeps everything sanitary. We don't want to introduce any bugs throughout the fermentation or the aging process, at least ones that we don't want. We will introduce malolactic bacteria, and we will introduce yeast into this rosé wine. But we don't want anything that's been residual stuck on a tank. We can clean stainless steel tanks with caustic chemicals and acidic chemicals to clean everything really well. So stainless steel, it's also not going to react with the wine as compared to our favorite for red wines, oak, especially French oak, which we use here at Bouchain. Oak definitely imparts flavor into wines, especially when the barrels are young. We don't want that on our rosés because we just don't want that oak profile in these wines. There are rosés that do have some oak on them, and that's just a stylistic thing. So into a steel tank, we keep it very cold, and we keep it cold for the main reason, it's a couple reasons, because we're going to introduce a yeast into this wine, particularly one that I love called Vin 13. If Hannes is watching this, he's probably laughing at me right now because he thinks I use this yeast too much, but whatever. So Vin 13 yeast has the ability to, it's warm in here because of these lights, sorry. Vin 13 has the ability to cool to ferment at a very cool temperature. And that's some key highlight that we want for this wine. So into a stainless steel tank, kept very cold in the low 50s for a long time. And so I call it sort of a crock pot fermentation, slow and low. We introduce the yeast to the juice. The sugar is just going to kind of tick, 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 tick. Nice fermentation graph on that versus a Pinot Noir, which is a fast fermenter. Boom, it'll ferment in 3-4 days. We want this to just ever so slowly ferment down on the sugars because we want to maintain the really pretty aromatics and flavors that are produced at these lower temperatures. Vin 13 yeast is really great at producing and releasing thiols and what's the other word? Esters that I couldn't think of. Thiols and esters, think grapefruit, guava, citrus, passion fruit. And so we want to keep those things in our wine. If we let it go too warm, then some of those can be volatilized and lost. And so we don't want that. So we keep the tank very cold. We tend to put them in what's called we refer to it as a dairy tank. Tall, skinny. It's got a smaller headspace, which is the area where the top of the wine, if it's not a full tank, is going to interact with air. And so we minimize the headspace so that you're not volatilizing too much during the fermentation. We keep it cold, and we maintain all that really prettiness, light, fresh, versatile. Kept very cold. What we do throughout the day, at least once, probably two to three times during fermentation, is we'll walk up to the tank, check its temperature, check its sugar. If we see a stall in its fermentation, then what we can do is bump the temperature up 1 degree, maybe 2 degrees, and so then the sugars will continue to get fermented. We don't want the yeast Yeasts are very finicky. They're like small children. And so they just, they get picky, and if you don't baby them enough, then they get cranky and stinky. So the analogy of a child works actually pretty well. And so we try to keep them happy. If we need to give them a little more temperature, we do so. But we generally keep it very low in temperature, again, maintaining those flavors and aromas. Here is a fun segue time. Page 3 is done. We are doing it. I've been asked in the past, how do we get strawberry and guava and passion fruit into our wine? When do we introduce those fruits and juices into the wine? For those of us in the know, who've got our pinkies up in our noses and look down on that kind of stuff, there's no point in doing that, because it's really not that dumb of a question. For those that don't know it, it would seem, how can I get the aromas of guava and strawberry into something like this that's made from grapes? It's a valid question. The truth is, those are just chemical compounds that are formed and or released during fermentation or aging, or during ripening of a grape. Another beautiful thing about wine is that diversity. It takes a special place to grow grapes. It takes special temperatures to grow certain grapes. Carneros is known for its fog, its cool evenings, its cooler winds. Why can we grow Pinot and Chardonnays here? Because of that coolness. We maintain all that stuff. And so we've got the place, we've got the temperature, we've got, the soil goes into that, and all these different winemaking things in there. Those all are going to play a part in what those grapes are allowed to give us, or potentially will give us, if we can do our job the right way. And so it's not silly to think that, oh, they must have put strawberry juice in there or something like that. No, those are just grapes. They just, grape is able to synthesize or release these chemical compounds that you would find in those fruits. And so it's just a really cool thing about wine, really, if you think about it. And so as a recap, where have we been? We haven't talked about Saunier, which is coming up next, but we have talked about whole clusters. So now we've squeezed those grapes, we've squeezed that juice out, very little color, in a stainless steel tank. We've introduced yeast to that, and now it's fermenting, it's slow, it's cold. And now on to the second part of it. Like we're flying through these things. I feel like Dave Letterman just chucking these aside. And so what is Saunier? Saunier is that second portion of our Vin Gris blends, our rosé blends. And Saunier is bleeding. It's bleeding juice from a tank. Why would we do that? For two real reasons. One, we're going to concentrate the wine in the tank, the one we're going to make a red wine from, our beautiful red wines. Second, we collect that juice and we use it for our second component, the Saunier component. We call it the VG drain. It's just our terminology here. So VG meaning Vin Gris. But going back to why we do the Saunier, really it's about the red wine fermentation. The capture of the juice for the rosé is a secondary effect that we just highlight and take advantage of. And so the Saunier is a little bit more of a different concept to wrap your head around. So we're going to do a little imagining. And so let's all go forward in time, because we don't want to go back in time anymore right now. Let's go forward in time to harvest 2020. And we're down in the winery. We're standing in front of a tank, of stainless steel tank, and we've put in berries of Pinot Noir. Now, when we do our fermentations for Pinot Noir, we typically destem it. And so the berries have been knocked off the stems. They've been sent through a pump. A lot of the berries have been broken open, so the juice is now interacting with the skins. It's not every berry, but there's a percentage that are broken open. And so they go into a tank through hoses. Sometimes we dump them right into the tank if it's open top. And so now we are standing in front of this tank. Let's say, for the sake of this example, there are 10 berries and each has 1 gallon of juice. That is so far off, it's not even close to being realistic. But for the sake of this, 10 berries, 10 gallons of juice inside our tank. Now, what we want to do, a trick up our sleeve, it's Aloha Friday, by the way, a trick up the winemaker's sleeve in order to concentrate the juice inside of that tank to make a more dense, concentrated Pinot Noir, a still red wine, what we can do is we can take off some of that juice. The opposite, so if you're thinking in terms of concentration, the opposite would be dilution. What if we took our 10 berries with 10 gallons and added another 10 gallons? That's a dilutionary effect. Think of if you're making lemonade and you squeeze too much lemon in there, you add more water to dilute that out. We don't add the water to dilute the flavors at all. We take out a small fraction, let's just call it 10% for this example. And so if we bleed off, I do this because it's opening a valve. If we bleed off, call it 10%, we bleed off 10 gallons. So now what's left in our tank is 90 gallons to our 10 berries. And so we've increased the amount of skin contact and flavor potential to be released into that 90 gallons versus the 100 gallons. And so we've concentrated our red wine fermentation. So going back to why we do a Saunier, the secondary thing is we can collect that juice now. And so that Saunier, that VG blend, we pulled off our 10 gallons in our theoretical example. In actuality, though, it's going to be anywhere from sometimes it's 60 gallons to a couple hundred gallons, depending on the size of our fermentation. And so instead of letting that just fall down the drain like morons, we collect it into fermentation vessels and we ferment it. And so as grapes come in for our Pinot Noirs throughout harvest, not all of it comes in on the same day. And so we'll harvest our Pinot Noir over, call it a 3-week period, close to 4 weeks sometimes. And so one day we've got block 3 that comes in, the next day 11 or 43, whatever. These are just numbers to you. But so sometimes Dijons come in, sometimes Pomards come in, sometimes Swans come in. These are all clones of Pinot Noir. Random times these things will ripen, not random, but and so as we harvest them, maybe one day I've got 3 different blocks of Pinot coming in. What I'll do then is when you're making wine, you have to, you want to make the best wines available or possible from those grapes, but you have to take into consideration practicality and logistics. Being a winemaker is like being the person at the airport, the flagger, just letting things move here and there. And so a lot of logistics come into winemaking during harvest. And so if I've got a couple of blocks that came in on one day and we're going to VG drain, Saunier those tanks, the next day, then we might put all that juice together. It's all going to be Pinot Noir. And then the next day we've got 3 tanks. And so we collect that. Sometimes it's thinking about, what fermentation vessels do we have available? Do we have a stainless steel barrel? Do we have an oak barrel that's very neutral? Maybe. We don't tend to put a lot of oak on these wines, but if for one of these VG drains we needed something and we only had 40 to 50 gallons, we could use a very neutral, meaning old barrel that's not going to impart flavor. Another thing that's important about these Sauniers is that when we pull that juice off, it's going to be about 24 hours after we've crushed it, sometimes a little bit longer. That means that the color that's been extracted within that short time frame, remember 3 weeks of color extraction and in contact with the skins versus 24 hours, you're not getting much color in that. So you're bleeding it off. For the Pinots, it might be something more similar to what we've got in our Syrah color, but maybe not. The Swan doesn't have a lot of color in general, and so the VG drain's not going to have a lot of color either. But as we go along through harvest, we collect these VG drains, and then we treat them once we have the juice like we treated our whole cluster. We put it in a tank or a barrel or a fermentation vessel or whatever, and we introduce yeast to it. We might do my favorite Vin 13. We might do something else. What we want to do with these different yeasts sometimes is what fermentation temperature are they going to be at likely, and what sort of flavors and aromas do we want to highlight in something like that. I go back to that one I talked about in 13 because it's got that guava pop, it's got passion fruit, citrus, a lot of strawberry in there too. And so, see, I've lost my spot here. But what we'll do with all those VGs is ferment them now. And so At the end of harvest for our Pinot Noirs, we're sitting probably beginning of October, middle of October. We've got now our whole cluster press, and we've got our VG components. And sometimes we've had up to like 10, 12 different VG drains, these Saunier drains, available to us. Some are very small in quantity, some are maybe larger, a couple hundred gallons, few hundred gallons. But at that point in time now, we've got all these different wines. And then this is when you really have to start feeling bad for winemakers, because, you know, sad us, we just have to sit down and taste them over and over and over. And so we're constantly rating these. I just heard a dog bark. So somebody might have to mute their microphone, just kind of check. But anyways, once we're done with our fermentations, we start to evaluate these, and eventually we get into blending season. This is towards the end of the calendar year. And what we'll do, Chris, myself, Hannes, our assistant winemaker, we sit down, evaluate all these different blends, let's just say 10 different components now, our whole cluster, 9 Vin Gris blends or Saunier drains, and we're going to evaluate them. We're going to look at them each individually. We know that our whole cluster press is going to make up the bulk, the foundation of our Vin Gris blend, because that has the real backbone to what we want to put in this wine. The VG drains, those Sauniers, those are going to be essentially like the spice rack. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Let's say that the whole cluster press was very acidic and we want to round out the mid palate, or it doesn't have enough phenolics on the back end. Maybe one of our VG drains does. And so we look at all these things, write down our notes, and then start blending. And blending is a little bit of mad science, but it's a lot of spaghetti on the wall. Let's try this, let's try that. We will try dozens of blends over the course of a month or weeks, really, to try to figure out what's going to be the best blend that we can create. And what we're trying to do year after year is make the best wine, but we also want to maintain a style. And so we've created a style, Chris and I, over the years of this Vin Gris blend. We started in 2015. That one changed quite a bit because, well, we used a particular block that's gone now. But that was a spaghetti against the wall kind of year. And then we've morphed it and changed it. And now, really starting in 2016 is really when that style changed, and we've stuck with that. Every year is going to be different. Going back to why is wine amazing? Each vintage is different. It's, as Chris likes to say, the same thing every year, but you do it a different way. It's all the time. Things are changing. They're morphing. One year could be really rainy, and year could be really dry. All these different things that change. And so what we're trying to do, though, is pay tribute to those changes that we see every year, but also at the same time give you guys what you want, what you expect, what we expect from these wines. We want to maintain a quality, maintain a style, and really make the best wine, but do it with our logistics and productivity hats on. And so, man, I've lost myself. I got on one of those rants, one of those train cars, if you were following along earlier. We'll get there. We're going to get there, though. And so I find myself. I apologize. And so finally, after trying all these different things, we're getting to the end. Don't worry, people. I've long and rambling. Who thought you would listen to somebody speak about rosé for 35 minutes now? And so what we do at the end of this all is create the best blend that we can. All we have to do then is just get it ready now. And so once we pin down that final blend, maybe it's in December, call it, maybe beginning of January, come back refreshed after the holidays, taste these things, everything's tasting great. You've had a lot of candy and fatty foods over the holidays, and you want something refreshing. But we sit down and we blend these wines and we get them ready for bottling now. That's what we have left to do. Sounds easy, but what we do, and I'll spare you the details on this, but we get the heat stable and we get it cold stable, and we check all the chemistry of it and make sure that we're right on. And so this takes about 4 weeks, let's call it, and then we will be ready for bottling. And all we do at that point is send it through a cross-flow filter, and then into our bottling line. What we do with the filter is that we're removing any microbes, yeast, bacteria that we don't want in there, and then we're going to make it crystal clear. These beautiful colors really pop after you take out any filtration needed. And so now, here we are. Why? Checking myself. Somebody may have their speaker on, so if you could just check and make sure your cameras and speakers are off, I'd appreciate it. So, where are we? So now we're at the end, and we're here. What have we tried to do with these two different wines? These are very different. These are both rosés, rosé of Syrah. I found a 2017 actually, and then here's our 2019 rosé of Syrah. Color is still holding up pretty nicely actually for the 2017. People might think that rosé is not going to last very long, but this 2017 tasted great. Lots of strawberry, but the strawberry's gone from something in the 2019, which is really fresh, vibrant. It's got a lot of nice sort of herbal notes, like almost like a mint, that kind of thing. And then those changes happen over time and they morph a little bit. And so that strawberry's become more round and lush, but it's still got really nice acid in there because it's got a higher acid than something like our maybe Chardonnays or Pinots or still wines are going to have. These rosés have a nice freshness, high acid, and so they can maintain some age sometime. You don't think that really they can last that long, and why would you? Because they're delicious. You want to crush them and just drink them right away. But they do have the potential to last a couple years, is what I'm getting at. This was a 2018 and a 2019 rosé of Pinot. So obviously very different in color. Syrah, a different, thicker skin grape. And so even though these wines had your 3 hours or so in the press, you just are able to extract more just by the nature of the skins of the berry. Versus Pinot Noir, it's not going to have as much color potential as a Syrah, and so then our wines are a lot lighter and fresher in color especially. So now we're at the end. What do we do, and why have we discussed rosé for 40 minutes? Goodness gracious. Again, going back to why rosé. Rosé is delicious. It's plain and simple. It's delicious. It's fun. This is one of those wines that you can put under the microscope when you're thinking about wine. You can discuss it with your friends. It is not as simple as maybe it's made out to be. And so, but at the same time, the end of the spectrum, you could just take it to the beach, put it on the porch. It's porch pounder. Do what you want with it. But it has the ability to be whatever you want in the world of wine. I think going back again, it's just so versatile. I just love it so much, if you can't tell already. I mean, I don't know if I can talk for 40 minutes about much anything else, besides my children, who are adorable, by the way. But 40 minutes on rosé, because it's great. I love it. And it's not pretentious at all, and you can do all these things with it. I dare you to take your $300 bottle of Cabernet to the beach. You'll get some funny looks potentially. But rosé, I mean, it's very inviting. It's in cans, like I said. It's on tap. It's in bottle, whatever. And it's accessible to everybody. There's a lot of people who maybe don't want to drink a lot of rosé because it's pink. Well, I can tell you, and I'm speaking to the gentleman there, I can assure you, I live in a house full of women, 2 young daughters, amazing wife, even a girl dog. She's adorable too. But the future is grasp onto the pink. Don't be afraid of holding a nice glass of pink wine in your hand. It is real men drink pink, they say. Some stupid t-shirt I saw at some point somewhere. But it can fill all those needs of the wine world. And one of the notes I have here is that most importantly today, it's just fun. What we need right now is something that is light and fresh, both physically in these things and then up in our minds here too. So I will take this opportunity to say thank you for watching. We're over 40 minutes here. This is amazing. Thank you. I didn't see all your names drop off the screen either, and so you stuck with me. I appreciate that. I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that these are for sale. 30% off, dollar shipping. I'm not the salesperson here, but I should let you know that we do have these for sale. Right now, you can't go to the store and buy a dozen roses for your loved ones, but you could buy a dozen rosés. Boom, I got my pun in there. I love it. Feeling good about that. Anybody has questions, reach me. For all the good things, Goodmanson@bouchain.com. For all your complaints, Allard, Brian. You won't have any complaints. Feel free to reach out to me, Goodmanson@bouchain.com. Happy to answer your questions. I can't guarantee that I'll get back to you that day, that week. Maybe it'll be a couple of weeks, but I love hearing from you guys. I hope you're enjoying our wines. These are fun for us to do. Hopefully you're enjoying those. It is a weird time that we're living in. And so a note I want to get out there to all of you is that it's okay to feel lonely right now, but you're not alone. And so call your friends, call your parents, mom and dad, I'll call you later. Call your loved ones, call the people who slightly know you. I don't care. Just get out there, talk to people. You, like I said, you can feel lonely, but you are not alone. And so have some wine, enjoy it with friends, do your Zoom happy hours, whatever you can to just stay in touch with people. We all get through this. But I hope you all have a wonderful Easter weekend. And thanks everybody for listening. I'm going to step away. You can enjoy the scene as much as you want from here on out, but reach out, let us know if there's more things you want to hear about. I've been told I'm full of it, and so I assume that's good information. We are a green winery, so I will recycle that joke. And yeah, let us know what we can do to help make your days more fun. And so again, thank you from all of us here at Bouchain to you all out there in your homes. Yeah, be well, be safe, and thanks for watching. Okay, I'm going to step away. Enjoy the scene. This is our beautiful vineyard. Okay, everybody, bye-bye.